Thanks to Tom O'Fallows, as always, for our special Bond-themed intro there. That was excellent. Thank you, Tomo.
Wow. That was great.
And thanks to you, listener, for joining us for another of our incredibly popular James Bond Diminishing Returns episodes.
Yes, we move swiftly on. we were going to do this about 4 months ago when the new film came out, but
No Time to Die. Yes,
it's not happening. So as we record this in March 2021, Calvin, what's the current lie as to when this next film will be coming
out? It's currently scheduled for October 1st is its release date here in the UK, with previews on September 30th, which, as far as I'm concerned, means it's as good as out on September 30th. But so it's out then here, and then it trickles out through some European places throughout the next week, and then like America and globally from the 8th of October. And you know what? It might actually work this time. It might actually get released.
Just like COVID.
Yes.
It's just going to dribble its way around the world.
Yes.
If you are joining us anew, having not listened to these, because, I am Sol. Nice to meet you. That voice you heard there that isn't Calvin is Alan. And
hello.
The voice that is Calvin is our guest today. Calvin, thanks for joining us, Calvin.
Oh, I'm always thrilled to be here for Bond, particularly because we're talking about Casino Royale, which has been... I keep giving myself benchmarks throughout this entire discussion. It's like, okay, well, the guys don't like Connery all that much, but maybe we'll get onto Roger Moore and they'll really like it. And then we get about 3 films in and I'm like, oh, they're really not gelling with this. Maybe they'll like Pierce Brosnan. Oh, no, they've not liked GoldenEye. This is a lost cause. So now, finally, we're onto something that you might actually like, and that makes me very excited.
Yeah, and of course we, as you say, we're doing this because No Time to Die was due to be out this week. It's been moved, but we thought, well, we'll do a little consolation prize for the Bond fans. We'll just kind of do a Bond episode here, which is what we've done the last 2 or 3 times. No Time to Die had a release date.
Finally, we're going to see Daniel Craig in action, jumping across buildings, karate chopping people, fighting in really close-up, fast-edited things. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life for me and you.
April Fool's, dickhead! Yeah, you listening, you fucking idiot!
Oh my.
What, you thought we were doing Casino Royale with Daniel Craig? Knobhead. We're doing the 60s one instead.
April Fools, everyone.
April Fools.
Casino Royale from 1960. I mean,
you fucking bollocks. You bollocks. Listening to you. Listen to
you haven't quite engaged with the sort of fun prank nature of this, rather than from the aggressive bullying nature.
Yeah,
of
the
it.
fucking fools, mate. Clues in the name. They're an April Fool. They listened to this and they thought, Daniel Craig, Casino Royale. Oh yeah, 1st of April coming up because No Time to Die. Yeah, it's also April Fool's Day. You fucking idiot.
Oh my.
You fucking did you.
Wow.
You listening, you are our bitch.
Okay.
Come back next week for the actual Casino Royale. It's actually a really nice, fun Bond celebration here, because you would have just had Casino Royale with Daniel Craig this week, and then however many months until we get around to Quantum of Solace. Instead, you've got back-to-back Bond. We've got the spoof Casino Royale this week, and then our next episode's going to be the real Daniel Craig Casino Royale. So.
Yes.
Hello. Yes, our plan was to release the real Casino Royale episode next week. Things have changed a little bit, so you're going to have to wait a tiny bit longer. Next week, we have a really exciting episode with one of our most exciting guests to date. Do come back for that. And that marks the start of the show being fortnightly. So the following episode after that is going to be our annual Oscars episode. And so you're going to have to come back on the 3rd of May for the next Casino Royale episode, which is good. We're giving you things to look forward to while you wait for No Time to Die.
So we're talking about Casino Royale, which was released in 1967, back when Sean Connery was James Bond. Now, guys, just before we get into talking...
Idiot. You thought it was Daniel Craig from 2006. You stupid idiot.
Did we ever have a discussion about potentially covering this, like, way back when, like...
Yeah.
Oh, God. We definitely did. I think we had a...
We considered doing them in, like, a proper chronological order and then throwing in that other Connery one.
Yeah, Never Say Never Again.
Never Say It Again.
Is that what it's called?
Never Say Never Again.
I didn't think we'd have much to talk about. I thought we were just going to go, oh, what a stupid, dumb movie. Almost as dumb as our listeners who fell for this prank, you idiots! But I actually have loads to say about this film. It was so much more of an interesting relic than I was expecting. Obviously, I've never seen this before. I went into it, knowing there was this kind of weird spoof Bond movie made in the 60s. I kind of thought it was a cash-in based on someone having the rights to the book Casino Royale or something, trying to cash in on Bond's popularity. But
you're not wrong.
Watching it, it's so weird.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I sort of tuned out about 3 minutes in, because I was just like, it was so awful. My attention was lost immediately, and I really struggled to get through it, and really kind of felt faintly depressed afterwards. It was very.
So just like any other Bond film, then?
It was worse than any other Bond film. I'll let me put that right out there now.
This is my nutshell review, though. Genuinely, and I'm not just saying this to be difficult, genuinely, for long stretches of time, to me, this film was indistinguishable from an actual James Bond film of this era.
Oh, for God's sake.
Of course, there are bits where Woody Allen shows up and Orson Welles shows up, and it gets a bit silly, but... for example, I wrote down a quote, actually. Let me just pull it up. There's a scene where James Bond sees a woman and she says, "I'm Miss Goodthighs." And he says, "I can see that." Now, that's just James Bond. That isn't a spoof.
That is very Bond, I'll give you that one, yeah.
That isn't, like, a clever parody. That's just James Bond. That is indistinguishable from an actual 1960s James Bond film.
Well, I believe you are referring to a Peter Sellers scene there, and we will get into... Because I think the behind-the-scenes history of this thing is even more fascinating than what is actually on screen. But we will get into that and sort of talk a bit about how even the people behind the scenes and on the screen were in dispute about how exactly this film was going to work. Peter Sellers very much wanted to just be James Bond, and he just didn't want to do a comedy part, and he just wanted to be a suave secret agent, which did not gel with what a lot of the people around him thought they were making. So, you do have moments like that.
I mean, to be honest, the only reason I think this is worse than most James Bond films is that they haven't trimmed the edit a bit. Like, the pacing isn't quite right. But, in terms of on a scene-by-scene basis, I prefer stuff in this to a lot of the James Bond films I've seen.
I don't know about that. I mean, it's more akin to Austin Powers than James Bond, really. But
well, all right. Should we get into that right away? I was blown away at how similar to Austin Powers this is, to the point that I genuinely think Mike Myers might have accidentally watched this film thinking it was a real James Bond movie, not knowing it was a spoof. And then when he wrote International Man of Mystery, he was actually making a spoof of this Casino Royale film, thinking it was supposed to be serious, because Austin Powers is not an impression of any James Bond we've ever seen, but he does seem to be an impression of Peter Sellers as James Bond. Do you not think? He's so much more like Peter Sellers. And beyond that, the guy who plays Q, or whatever the character is in this film, he's like a stone's throw away from Michael York. It's like they went to Michael York and he said no, and then they went to this guy who was his, stunt double or something.
Yes, it's Mr. Bond, isn't it? Yes. If you'll be good enough to sign here, sir. It's not for me, it's for the Official Secrets Act.
You really do stock everything at Harrods, don't you?
Oh, I shouldn't pay too much attention to what you see going on here. It's all basic stuff. It'll be out of date by the January sales.
Hello, Exposition.
Austin, let me bring you up to speed. Dr. Evil has hijacked a nuclear warhead from Krepelakistan.
Only two things scare me. and one is nuclear war.
What's the other?
Excuse me?
What's the other thing that scares you?
Carnies.
It's obvious Mike Myers has seen this film, but, and I bet Mike Myers is a big Peter Sellers fan, because that seems like right up his alley.
But Baccarat does the music.
Well, it's also like, if you're going to do a pastiche of Bond, then this is where you go, I suppose, and it's just the same kind of route. But yeah, it is very similar to Austin Powers.
But like I say, it's like Austin Powers' touchstone for most of the Bond elements is based on this. Well, it's like when I was younger and my touchstones for the James Bond franchise came from Austin Powers. And if I tried to write a Bond spoof in my teens, it would have been like, well, what if I kind of rip off Austin Powers? Not rip it off, but what if I trace back what I assume James Bond is from Austin Powers? I don't know, it just baffled me that it was so... and we won't get into it too much because I'm sure we'll cover Austin Powers properly one day, but obviously I think Austin Powers does a much better job than this film.
Just as a sort of general overview, my thoughts were, this is awful, obviously it's terrible, nothing's working, but it really feels like they're trying, and like the sets are very spectacular in a lot of ways. It feels like there's been some money put into this. Oof. This isn't just a cheap knockoff. It doesn't feel like that anyway, and the cast are theoretically a solid cast.
Yeah. It's a much better cast than you get in any James Bond film, pre-Daniel Craig anyway, certainly the ones I've seen. At least insofar as I recognised actors in it. It wasn't just made up of actors who are only famous, like random Europeans who can't speak English who've been plucked out of obscurity and dubbed over, who are now only famous because they were in a James Bond film.
So, Calvin, you better start us off. What's the backstory? How did this even get to be made in the first place?
Well, it all goes back to in the mid-50s, I think, before Mr. Broccoli and his business partner Harry Saltzman came in and took up the Bond rights from Ian Fleming to make their movie series. Fleming had already sold the film rights to Casino Royale specifically, to a Mr. Gregory Ratoff, who is an actor, producer. He was in All About Eve, actually. He was one of the characters in that. And had quite a solid career, but he bought the rights and was trying to get a film off the ground about it, but he couldn't quite make it work. But then he died, and the rights to the film ended up with his widow, who knew a man called Charles K. Feldman, who was sort of an agent producer type. He produced the film What's New Pussycat prior to this, with Woody Allen and Peter Sellers and Ursula Andress and Peter O'Toole. So he bought the rights from her and then was trying to get something off the ground with Cubby Broccoli and the official channels, but they weren't having any of it. They just kind of wanted to take complete creative control, and they were bickering over money and all that kind of stuff. So Feldman eventually decided that he was going to make his own Bond film, and then he tried to poach away Sean Connery, but Sean Connery wanted $1 million and he wasn't going to give him that, so he just ended up deciding that he was going to make a spoof because he'd made a lot of comedies and What's New Pussycat had gone down well for him. So called up a load of favours from that film to get this one off the ground. But the production history we'll talk about as we go through the individual scenes, the story. But yeah, I mean, did you notice how many directors were credited on the front of this film in the credits?
Yeah.
5!
It's interesting, isn't it, how up until a certain point it seems like people had to, or felt they had to, officially sanction their spoof movies. The way Airplane is Airplane's a legitimate remake of whatever that film was that they're spoofing. They bought the rights to this obscure movie about an airplane disaster and just remade it with jokes in it. And it's sort of that same thing here where it's like, you could have just made a James Bond parody without buying the rights to a James Bond book. I suppose if you wanted to actually call them James Bond.
Yeah, you just call him like Steve Pond or something.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't have been able to call it Casino Royale, and you wouldn't have been able to have characters called James Bond, and I think that's the difference.
You know what I'd call it, though? I'd call it Casino Royal.
I'd call it Casino with Cheese. So yeah, just to give us a bit of history here, Calvin, what is the sort of 1960s era history with people trying to rip off Bond or Bond becoming this huge hit? Like, what was the legacy of that? What was the knock on of that?
What was Operation Kid Brother? Does that fit into this at all?
Oh, that was actually around about this time, So yeah, I mean, this was like the peak of the spy craze of the 60s, really. Thunderball was the highest grossing Bond film. Up until Moonraker, I think, unadjusted for inflation, it made an awful lot of money. And at this point we had...
Is that the previous Bond film before this one?
Yes. This was released just a few months before You Only Live Twice. And Man from U.N.C.L.E. had come out and was on TV. There were an awful lot of knockouts. I think Get Smart might have been on TV at this point, or if not, it was...
The Avengers?
That'll have been on. The Saint.
Is that a spy thing?
Yeah, The Saint, 1963 or 64, I think that launched. So yeah, this is very much in the spies are just the in thing, and everyone's looking for a bit of a cash in. And I guess if you actually have the rights to one of the books, then that's gonna do you a lot of favors. And this film did actually make money. It cost an awful lot of money, but it did make. And I do wonder how much of that was because people were just sort of fooled into thinking it was an official thing, much like I was when I bought the VHS when I was about 9-10 years old.
You idiot! You fucking idiot! You're as stupid as our listeners, Calvin. You idiot!
Yes.
I wonder if we'll actually lose any listeners because I'm just insulting them so heavily. Do you think I'll actually really?
I'd stop listening if I were you.
Do you think I'll actually really like strike a nerve with someone and they'll just be in a bad mood and that'll be enough to push them over the edge?
Well, if they're not already in a bad enough mood that we're not doing the film that people like.
Come on, it's an excellent April Fool's joke. We had you.
Yes.
You thought we were doing it to coincide with No Time to Die, and we were. But it's also April Fool's Day. The stars aligned. You were fooled.
But you know what? You guys have actually gone beyond what an awful lot of Bond fans do, because an awful lot of really diehard Bond fans, I've known a couple actually who, either hadn't seen this film when I met them and they only saw it later, but that was after years of being Bond fans. Like, a lot of people just kind of just completely disinterested, I suppose. If you're not interested in the history of film and that kind of thing, as obviously we are, I think it is such an interesting relic, if not an entertainment piece in itself. But yeah.
I guess it's like how I love the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but I've never watched Elektra, the Daredevil spin-off that Fox made in like 2005 or whenever it was. I have no interest in watching Elektra. I guess it's the same thing.
Yeah.
I've never watched the Fargo TV series, even though Fargo is one of my favourite films.
Yeah.
So when Corey Feldman, or whoever it was, got the book, how did he raise the money? Did he just like go around the usual sort of places, go, look, got the rights to the book, give us $100,000?
I believe so. By all accounts, and this is going from interviews and behind the scenes stuff and commentaries and the like, Charles K. Feldman was your typical Hollywood agent, sort of like what your impersonation of Cubby Broccoli is. Like, that was him in just real life, and everything was whining and dining and friends and parties. And from what I gather, not much of an artistic sensibility and not much in the way of he was very much someone who would bring in writers and directors to concoct something, but then impose terrible limitations on them or whatever, or put people together who really...
Listen, kid, the last scene, I want a giant spider. Spider's the most dangerous predator in the animal kingdom.
That is interesting because, one of my biggest takeaways really watching this film is that I felt like it was striving to feature far more artistry. Maybe that's not the right word. But, it felt like it was trying to be less of a commercial product and more of an artistic, expression from whoever was making it than any James Bond film I've seen. Like, there's far more care seemingly gone into some of the cinematography, and there's these big, long musical sequences where things get really trippy and strange, and it's
I
not
think
to
that's
say
an
that.
Extremely generous assessment of this film.
Well, I was going to say, it's not to say that the sequences work or that it's makes for a good film, but I felt like it was doing more interesting things, which you wouldn't be doing if you were just trying to make a cash grab, rip-off.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think you're right in a way that there may be an artistic eye behind all this, but it's an artistic eye that is fueled by 1960s era hallucinogenic drugs.
Yeah, and it's also one director working with 4 other directors who have different visions from the sounds of it. So
no one is working together.
That's it. It doesn't form a cohesive whole. I mean, it is interesting hearing there were 5 directors, because it felt like a completely different film every time we were introduced to a new James Bond. It was just completely tonally and the style of humor and.
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, it started out with Peter Sellers and Ursula Andress and Orson Welles, and it was gonna be a sort of more closely to the book than it ended up being. It was gonna be a spoof, but then Peter Sellers got into a falling out with, I think there were 2 different directors for his segments, and then he just walked off the film and refused to come back, and as a salvage operation they brought in another director to film some stuff, and then John Huston is one of the directors, if you can believe it. He filmed all of the opening stuff and then all of the stuff at the Scottish Castle.
Well, he's in it, isn't he?
Yeah, and then there was a different director doing all of the Berlin stuff, and then there was another director, Val Guest, who was kind of brought in by the producer to make sense of it, basically, and they wanted to credit him.
Stitch it together.
They wanted to credit him as a coordinating director, but he refused that credit because he was aware of how much of a mess it was. So I think he gets additional scenes in the credits.
He should have refused a credit altogether. I see what you're saying there, because that the Peter Sellers storyline, that does feel like the proper Bond storyline, albeit it's just a bit silly. There's some gags, Orson Welles is doing magic tricks and all that sort of stuff. But I mean, all the horror stories you've heard out of Hollywood over the years, very rarely actually does that end up with someone walking off a set that they're contracted to be on and sort of refusing to go back. So it must have been something pretty bad must have happened. Either that, or they just didn't have a very good contract with him and they were doing it cash in hand, and so he just walked away.
Well, you know what? Let's get into it later on. Should we start talking about some of the opening sequences first? Because
yes, yeah.
What we're seeing at the start of the film is, I believe, directed by John Huston. I mean, he's in it anyway. He's playing M, and him and a bunch of officials go to see James Bond as played by Peter Sellers, who in this version of the film is our OG James Bond.
Because James Bond is a code name, as we all knew anyway.
Well, they make it that later on, certainly. But this is sort of Peter Sellers existing... not Peter Sellers. What's his name? David Niven. That's the one.
Yeah, I was going to say, is this a different cut I watch? Yeah.
Yeah. And they refer to, they make reference to a Sean Connery type character who's taking his name and is womanizing and all that kind of stuff. So they very much sort of say that, this is the real James Bond, even though he's not even really like the Bond from the book. It's a bit
He's
weird.
nothing like James Bond as I know him. He's extremely uncomfortable around women. He's extremely uncomfortable with sexual advances. He seems pretty uptight, to be honest.
Well, that very early scene where you got all the old men in a car driving over to David Niven's house.
See, at this point, that's when it just felt like a real James Bond film to me.
Well, that's it. This is the first 2 minutes, and this is where it lost me, because I just thought, what is this? It felt like a surrealist piece of just the old men talking. I thought, and the dialogue there, it felt like some sort of 1960s beatnik freeform poetry. It didn't mean anything. There was kind of no correlation between what they were saying to each other. It was just sort of random noises and sounds. And I looked at the thing, so it was 2 hours and 10 minutes long, and just sort of
it's far too long. But I'll say right now, I mean, if this had been trimmed down to a sleek 70 minutes, 80 minutes, it'd probably be one of my favourite Bond films that I've watched. It's more lively and interesting. And some of the gags work for me. There were long stretches where it didn't feel like there were jokes in it, but that bit at the start where they all meet in the car, that felt like, right, this is something you'd get in a real James Bond movie, but they're being crowded by a load of sheep that they're not even acknowledging, who are kind of getting in the way of the car, and I found that funny. I don't know if that was supposed to be a joke, but...
Do you know what the extra thing on top of this is, apart from this is a shit film? I really hate this 1960s Blake Edwards type of comedy. I don't like...
You hate spoof movies.
I've never found Peter Sellers funny, ever.
Kind of.
And that what I'm terming as Blake Edwards style, I'm sure you know what I mean by that, but it's like I just don't find it funny at all. And it's very 60s, and at least it has a kind of tone to it.
I completely agree with that. There's an awful lot of, like, I feel like, I think Monty Python came after this, but it feels of that similar, like, random, just stuff happens randomly, and that's funny because it's random and that kind of stuff.
Well, you see, I do find random shit happening funny, depending on how it's handled. And a good example of that would be about an hour 40 into this film, where we just have a close-up of a stuffed tiger, and its tongue is... its tongue's just...
Goodness.
Do you know the shot I'm talking
I know
about?
exactly what you mean, where there's a stuffed tiger and then all of a sudden it has a real tongue coming out in one shot.
It's just like randomly moving a tongue around, like it's not even licking its lips, it's just its tongue's moving like forwards and backwards, and it's just this weird puppet tongue coming out of a stuffed tiger. And I maybe I wasn't paying attention, maybe I missed something, but from what I could gather, there's no relevance to anything happening in the film or that scene, or is there a reason why that happens? Is there?
Nope.
Is that like a spy camera on the end of the tongue or something?
Not that I know of, unless it was some kind of niche joke reference at the time. But yes, so this whole opening chunk of the film, M is killed and Bond then goes to his widow to spend time at the Scottish castle, and then he's assassination attempt because they're actually all agents. And this is like a good chunk, sort of like half an hour of the film, maybe even more. Did it lose you at any point? Because it's one of my least favourite chunks of the film, all that stuff in the castle.
Well, yeah, it lost me before
did.
they even got there. But, yeah.
It did, but and genuinely, I'm not just saying this to be snarky. I know I keep hitting this beat, but it didn't lose me any more than any other Sean Connery James Bond film.
God,
the whole castle section. Okay,
or George Lazenby.
It sort of sets itself up to be a proper sex comedy. But then the whole conceit is that the main character is scared of sex or doesn't like sex or whatever. So, I mean, I couldn't tell any of the women apart at all. I didn't know when he was talking to the French Scottish woman, his daughter, or Moneypenny. I had no idea.
There's a whole house of, like, there's a clan of redheads.
They must be the Scottish ones then.
Real James Bond never just went and there were like loads of redheads.
Yeah, he mixes it up. He likes his like a Neapolitan ice cream, sort of.
Well, yeah, but who in their right mind likes Neapolitan ice cream? You buy the Neapolitan ice cream, you eat the chocolate and the strawberry, and then you're stuck with a big whack of shit vanilla. And like if it was nice, high quality vanilla, that would be
I like a quality vanilla.
But it's not. It's always like soft scoop, milk and sugar frozen. It's not like.
But that's very much what I expect from Bond girls. Just cheap, tacky. So Calvin, I noticed Ursula Andress. Well, I wouldn't recognise her if she walked up to me in the street, but I saw her name in the credits. I don't know which one she played. So, how many of the people in this film have been in proper Bond films?
Ooh, well, Ursula Andress, that might be it. I mean, Ronnie Corbett wasn't. There might be some sort of the smaller parts.
When I saw Ronnie Corbett, it took me about a minute, like it took me about 5 minutes to figure out who I was looking at. But I just, for the whole time I was like, it's obviously not one of the League of Gentlemen because the eras don't add up. But it's just got that Steve Pemberton, Reece Shearsmith vibe about it, whatever they've done there.
Sorry, I'm mistaken, obviously, because Kronstein, the character from Russia with Love, is in this in the Berlin segment. So is Bert Kwok? Is that how you pronounce his surname, Alan?
Bert Kwok.
Bert Kwok.
Bert Kwok.
Well, I'll tell you right now, Calvin, you're missing someone as well. I hate to school you on your specialist subject, but there one of the redhead women I think possibly the one who plays his daughter.
Angela Scolar. Yeah.
One of the women is definitely in a Bond film, and she
Yes.
plays one of the kind of women that are trying it on with him when he goes to like a ski lodge that's
Yes.
full of women that are trying to shag him.
Yes, Majesty's Secret Service, yes.
And I was wondering, because when I saw that, I thought, oh, that's a really similar dynamic to this. Are they taking aspects of another book here? Are they spoofing that just because it's like what Bond sort of is known for? Is that similarity just coincidental, or is that because the books were kind of taking pieces from other books when they were turning them into films? It just felt very similar dynamic to kind of have him stuck with all these women in a house that all want to fuck him, and he's going to try and resist them.
No, you're right. That hadn't occurred to me before, but Majesty's Secret Service, the book, wouldn't have been long out at this point, so it's highly possible. I just want to touch on like David Niven, like what he's doing as Bond, because I don't think that the instinct is wrong. I think we might have talked about this in other podcasts. It's hard to spoof the character of James Bond, and particularly at this time.
You're right, Lash. Just thought I'd pop by, see how you're doing.
So go on, Calvin, you were saying it's hard to spoof Bond. Go on.
It's hard to spoof Bond because when so much of it is so larger than life and ridiculous anyway, and I guess that they're doing that here by making Bond the antithesis of what we know Bond to be. Like, he's very skittish around women and all that kind of stuff, which I don't think is a bad instinct. And I do like David Niven an awful lot, but it's how do you feel? I guess is what I'm getting at.
Well, I think I don't think it's right for Bond Prime, which is what we're setting him up as. It's like, surely that's the characteristic you give to Woody Allen's Bond, who we're introduced to. That surely that's like one of the fringe James Bonds that we're going to be introduced to, rather than it just feels a bit weird that we've got this premise, but then the original James Bond, as it were, isn't kind of what we think of as being James Bond. It just feels weird to be doing something postmodern at that point in the film. Not postmodern, but deconstructive.
Yeah, but you're doing that in a spoof of something that's already established. So that is the deconstruction, isn't it? That's the whole point.
The fact that we're then introduced to about 10 other James Bonds, and one of them is just kind of James Bond without any spin on it, is weird. Do you know what I mean? That feels the wrong way round.
I don't even know what the concept of this film is, to be honest. Like, it's never quite adds up.
Yeah.
But, the idea is the original Bond, he's actually quite moral and do-goody, but now Bond has a reputation for being a Sean Connery type because it's a code name.
Calvin, I have a question. Which actor would you say to have portrayed James Bond is the most problematic of the bunch? Because obviously on one hand we've got Sean Connery, likes to hit women, only with an open hand.
He doesn't like to hit women, he just does it when he has to.
Dressed up as a Japanese fisherman with face paint and stuff on. On the other hand, we've got Woody Allen.
Fucked his daughter.
Yeah, alleged sex pest, depending on how deep you want to go with all that.
Oh, God.
Now they're the two that spring to mind. I'm sure there's some skeletons in George Lazenby's closet that we don't know about. But who would you say, Calvin?
Timothy Dalton. He once ran over a dog and then reversed over to finish it off.
Yeah, you can't just leave it in pain, Alan. You've got to put it out of its misery.
Well, that's why he's not been on the list so far. He's a good guy.
On the list of credentials that you laid out there, Sol, I think I would have to go with Woody Allen.
I think.
Who,
is there no one else though that I'm missing? Because they're the two that come to mind. But is there no one else like in this film, or whoever that guy is who's like the official voice of James Bond in all the radio plays now, who was the villain in the Pierce Brosnan one? Is there anything with him?
No.
He seems like he could be a bit dodgy, maybe.
A late charge by Peter Sellers for the title of hairiest Bond. I wasn't expecting that.
Well, Peter Sellers is quite problematic, isn't he? Wasn't he a bit of a dick with women? Bit misogynistic behaviour?
Yeah,
he's kind of mild side compared to Woody Allen and Sean Connery, but he's definitely on that ranking, isn't he?
So this whole opening, well, I call this opening segment with David Niven. It goes on for about 45, 50 minutes. Like, this was all done after all the Peter Sellers stuff was shot, and it was intended as bookends. They obviously went a bit further than just being bookends with these whole protracted sequences, but we do eventually get to Peter Sellers. So you guys not a fan of him? Saul, I thought you're a Peter Sellers fan, aren't you? From Lady Killers and Pink Panther and all that.
I mean, I do like most of the Pink Panther films quite a lot, but it's not for his performance particularly. It's more down to the writing, if you can believe that.
I don't, funnily enough.
I kind of feel like you could put anyone in that film and they perform adequately well, that I would enjoy it to the same standard as and I'm sure he was workshopping the gags on set. I'm sure some of that's down to him. But I mean, yeah, I've never watched a Peter Sellers film and thought like, wow, this guy's amazing. And you know, I've seen all the Pink Panthers. I've seen Dr. Strangelove, as you say, Lady Killers, which I like, but I remember Alec Guinness in that film rather than Peter Sellers. Yeah, I don't know. I never really warmed to him. He gives off an air of being a bit of a dick, which is probably
definitely
probably right for James Bond. And you know, by all accounts, he was a bit of a dick. But I think he's one of those people where they just emanate that energy. You know, you can tell.
Okay, well,
he also strikes me as someone a bit like Rowan Atkinson, who is like ruthless about how comedy is supposed to work and how it has to be done, and takes it far too seriously.
Yeah, but then, you know, Rowan Atkinson, I will say, is a pretty phenomenal comedic performer at, you know, doing very specifically what he does. So I'll give him some degree of a pass for it. Whereas Peter Sellers, yeah, I don't know.
Well, on this film, he's trying not to do much comedy. I don't know if he's just being goaded into it, like, on the day, or they get him to do one sort of big outrageous take, and that's the one that they use. I don't know, but as something of a fan of him, I think my main problem with this film is that the whole thing is kind of constructed around this middle section with Peter Sellers because he walked off and they felt like they needed to salvage this. For me, actually, I could take all of the Peter Sellers stuff out and I might have a better time with it if we just took out this, like, 40 minutes, whatever it is, and we just had it be David Niven and all the characters around him instead. I do love the Orson Welles scene when that comes in, but Peter Sellers, I could, quite easily have a good enough time in this film without him. But I just think that's interesting that the whole project is about salvaging these sequences, and they're some of my least favourite in The Thing, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting how often that happened in his films. There's about 5 Pink Panther films that had to do the same thing because he was rude enough to leave them by dying. What a knob. Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with you. I'd go so far as to take David Niven out of it as well, because I don't really get anything from his sequences.
And then take Woody Allen out of it, and then just throw it in the bin, and nobody would ever see it.
But I mean, I think if you gave me a cut that just focused on what's her name? Is it Minat Bond? What's her name?
Oh, Matta Bond.
Lady Bond. Matta Bond. That's it. Matta Bond. If we just focused in on her and somehow left the Orson Welles bits in, I'd probably have a much better time with it. Yeah, I'd be alright with that. I'll tell you what I did like. I did like the taxi gag in her sequences.
What, with Bernard Cribbins?
Yes, with Bernard Cribbins. She needs to get from London to Berlin, and she just hails a taxi, and he pulls up outside, what is it, the embassy, wherever it is in Berlin, and just sort of says, like, that'll be £482, please, ma'am. That was a solid gag, wasn't it? That registered as a joke in a way that a lot of the film didn't.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny you bring up Matara. Joanna Patet, might be mispronouncing that, but a couple of her sequences are some of my favourites in the film that are completely non-tangential. That whole dance sequence when Bond first comes to her. I mean, and that just shows you what kind of money they're throwing at this. I mean, that is a very elaborate sequence that has nothing to do with anything.
But again, that is the sort of shit that I feel inspired Austin Powers far more than any, like, the aesthetic of Austin Powers and the fembots and the musicality of Austin Powers. The fact that it does have a lot of songs and musical numbers and stuff. And that's, I keep going back to it, but I just couldn't believe how much of this film was in the DNA of Austin Powers. Far more, I think, than any actual James Bond film. Because there's also that big musical montage at one point where we see Peter Sellers just kind of tripping out, and there's money floating around, I think, with a Burt Bacharach song playing. And it felt like
when he's dressing up as Hitler.
Yeah, and it felt like when Austin Powers first comes to the, modern day, and he's kind of coming to terms with it, and he's checking out the casinos and stuff. It was very odd. Burt Bacharach's on the roof of a bus.
That spinning circular bed is just taken from this, and it is in Austin Powers films. It's I think he very definitely took an awful lot from this, and did it much better. I think all of the Austin Powers films are much better than this. But saying that, my favourite sequence in the film, the only sequence that I genuinely really love, and I think is a good time, is the whole Berlin sequence in this weird spy school that Natta Bond has been sent to, with Ronnie Corbett and Anna Quayle as these bizarre characters. Did you like that? It feels like it's got a real director behind it, like making consistent choices throughout that 10-15 minute chunk.
I agree with you there. Yeah, I don't know if it works as a whole, as a chunk maybe, but it's just it's fitting in with something else that the rest of the film doesn't make any sense. But I know what you mean, and the cinematography and the set design are working together. The actors are obviously working to a particular style that is working. I like the little exchange where the woman goes, "Oh, well, we're going to the auction." And she's like, "Oh, what are they selling? What are you talking about selling? You said there was an auction." No, I didn't. That little exchange between them it just worked. I think the performances made that work, even though it was totally pointless and stupid.
What I noticed here is the earliest instance I think I've ever seen of a cutaway gag. There's a bit where she says something to the effect of, we teach kung fu self-defense, and then they just cut away to a load of ninjas going hua hua hua, and then it just cuts back, and it was just it's not funny. There's no real need for it, but it's that's that language of Family Guy right there. That's that kind of modern comedic sensibility, and I can't think of a film or anything, to be honest, from earlier than this that's done that.
Well, I think they do it earlier on in this film as well, with the Woody Allen gag, when David Niven's referring to his nephew, and then they cut to Woody Allen about, in front of the firing squad, about to be assassinated.
Yeah, but I mean, that's a whole standalone little scene that they cut to. What I'm talking about here is it's literally they cut away for about 2 seconds and cut back. It's it's a very specific rhythm of, cutaway sight gag rather than just,
It's a sort of non-diegetic punchline, isn't it? Where you're leaving the reality of this scene to just to do a punchline. Yeah.
Well, they are technically supposed to have opened a door, and that's what they're seeing inside. That's when she's giving her the tour of the spy school.
So you think it's an interesting filmic use of a cutaway. Actually, it's just badly edited because they didn't have a set. see where
that makes sense.
Alan, you mentioned that whole sequence about the casino, because that's another highlight for me anyway, is Orson Welles in this. And indeed, he just decided that he wanted to do some magic in the film. Yeah. And so when Peter Sellers was off having a strop and someone was trying to convince him to come out of his trailer, they would just film Orson Welles doing these bits of magic, and ended up in the film.
I've heard you explain that to me before, Calvin, going in, so I knew to expect that. When you told me that story, I thought, Orson Welles, he was a magician at a point in his life, in real life. Yeah. He can do magic tricks. I thought they were filming him do actual magic tricks, but all the tricks he does are clearly set up by the production designers on the film. They're obviously props and things rather than...
Well, I mean, pretty much all magic is props. I mean, what? Yeah.
The bit where he levitates a table and then levitates a woman under a thing is obviously using camera tricks to make magic happen, rather than Orson Welles did it for everyone on set.
A lot of magic is that. The skill of a magician is presentation, really. I mean, obviously there is some practical skill with sleight of hand and stuff, but with those big things like making an elephant disappear and stuff, it's all done by stagehands behind the scenes.
But not
camera trickery. It felt like an edit. It felt like there's someone there, and then we're going to stop the camera and then.
Well,
take it
yeah.
Well,
away.
you've clearly never seen Chris Angel do magic then, because that's what he does.
I mean, this wasn't him just saying, "Oh, I'm bored. Roll the camera. I'll do something." There was obviously some preparation involved, but this was.
That would be better though.
I mean, it didn't seem to be utilizing his magic skill set. It just seemed to be like, right, let's have a load of stagehands like below the shot with doves who chuck them up at the right time.
I don't know though. I think
we'll put a blue filter and a red filter over the camera.
Well.
It's there though when he pulls the handkerchief out and he's like, he's got a very smooth touch to it. Yeah, he's obviously experienced, which is nice.
But he commands the scene. You know, that goes beyond doing magic. He's just the best thing to watch in this film.
But I'm all for putting a camera on Orson Welles.
Yeah,
and then showing us that. Let's see what happens.
Let's have that for an hour. I'd much rather watch that than
yeah, exactly. But it doesn't fit in with the film at all. I still don't know how Baccarat works.
Burt Bacharach, he's the composer.
Yeah, Burt Bacharach plays cards.
But it was mainly falling out with Orson Welles, or rather just Peter Sellers getting in a bit of a strop about Orson Welles. That means that they shot most of their scenes separately. I think there's like 1 or 2 shots in there where they're both like quite clearly there because
very evident in the edit that they're not together.
Legend has it that Princess Margaret came to the set and Peter Sellers was making a big stink about like, oh well, she knows me and she's my friend and all this kind of stuff, but she was actually like only interested in talking to Orson Welles, and so that pissed him off and meant that he left set for a week.
Imagine being on a set with Orson Welles and you're the petty one.
And Orson Welles doesn't get up, I don't think, throughout the whole thing. I think he is sat down permanently.
Yeah, I noticed that because he stood up to elevate the woman. To make her actually stand up, because I was thinking up until that point, is like, I wonder if this is like his legs actually don't work. Maybe it's like an FDR kind of secret wheelchair situation.
And then he puts Bond through this whole like torture thing, which is just the editor going crazy with like filters, basically. I don't know what you make of that, like where Peter Sellers is suddenly in a kilt and he's like marching outside. Like, how did that play to you?
Well, it was all in his head, wasn't it? I think that's the idea.
Well, it's in his head, but then Vesper comes in and she's a part of the act, and then she kills him in a very unconvincing way because they didn't have footage of Peter Sellers dying, so they just cobbled this together with what they have.
Was supposed to be Peter Sellers dying?
Yes.
I wondered where he went, and I thought, well, they haven't wrapped that character up very well. But then I thought, why would she kill him after she sort of killed everyone else and saved him? I thought she was rescuing him.
No, it makes no sense. Nope.
Okay.
She's a double agent, it turns out.
I was going to ask, actually. That was one of my questions, like, what happened to the Peter Sellers Bond? Because I couldn't figure out what his ending was. He just disappeared.
Because like all of a sudden Orson Welles is killed, Peter Sellers is killed, and then that's that whole chunk of the film sort of done and dusted. And then they just concoct this bizarre climax in which Mata Bond is kidnapped by a flying saucer, and then they go to the villain's base and it's all just very surreal and crazy.
I forgot about the flying saucer.
I forgot about the flying saucer.
Because that happens, and then David Niven goes, yes, it's a flying saucer, don't worry about it. And then I just forgot what was going on.
But it's a real 1960s British film, Flying Saucer. It looks like the Smash Aliens from the old TV ads.
Oh, it's like the Daleks are going to come out of it, like one of the Peter Cushing.
Yeah, like it's not a good UFO that they've created. It's the kind of thing that if I think someone in the ADR when the UFO appears near the end, I think someone says like, it's just a commercial or something. Which is like, yeah, that is what you'd think if you saw that. You wouldn't think, oh, there's evidence of alien life. You'd think, oh, it's some sort of PR stunt.
But just the money being spent on this, I mean, and again, to go back to the idea that, you know, these David Niven segments are supposed to be wraparounds, but the amount of money that they're spending, like there's a bit coming up in Woody Allen's Lair where just for the point of one gag, like a choir like come up from beneath the floor, and it's this very elaborate set and prop, and you think, God, all of the hydraulics that must have gone into that, the planning for like this very throwaway gag, which I kind of like in theory. Like I love, you know, if it was funny, that'd be fantastic, but it's not. And same goes for this flying saucer and all of these very elaborate special effects.
I mean, I will say I'd struggle to think of a film of this era that's, you know, significantly funnier than anything in this. And I know, Calvin, I know you like Laurel and Hardy and you think they're funny.
What, by 1967?
Yeah. I mean, I guess I found the Marx Brothers funny. I don't know. I don't think comedy had really figured out what the hell was going on until, like, the 80s, really.
I think it was just of its time.
I think they had to go through this kind of ramshackle, what the fuck are we doing kind of project to figure out how to make funny stuff. I think it was a learning curve.
So Casino
Royale to thank for Austin Powers.
Right, yes. This film stumbled so Austin Powers could walk. I mean, the ending's a mess. Woody Allen's revealed to be Dr. Noah, the main villain.
Is that just because they couldn't use Dr. No?
I think so. I don't know if it's supposed to be some kind of Jewish gag, like Dr. Noah.
Oh, I mean, doesn't quite work, does it? Because Noah wasn't Jewish, was he? I mean, he was.
And there's this whole knockabout sort of slapstick ending. Frankenstein's monster is here. Characters are literally. There's a bit where one of the characters,
Frankenstein Bond. I thought we invented him.
No. There's literally a bit where, like, David Niven walks into the casino with some characters, and I think it's like Moneypenny and Matterbond are just like, oh, well, we're off now, goodbye. And it's quite clear that the actors were just either hadn't filmed the previous scenes that they shot or just couldn't be afforded for it or whatever, but it's all very messy. And then, cowboys and Native Americans and seals and all sorts come in.
Pathetic, isn't it? It really is pathetic.
Now, this was a real trope of comedies of the time and previously, whereas if you couldn't... I mean, even Doctor Strangelove, like, the original ending for that was a big custard pie fight between everyone in the war room, and there was just... I mean, that was how comedies ended. You just end with some big knockabout slapstick fight. Unfortunately, they didn't do that for Strangelove, but they do it here.
I mean, it's an ending worthy of this film, really.
Well, I mean, that's kind of what I mean insofar as I can't think of any other funny films from, earlier than this, and I also can't think of any films that end in a custard pie fight, so I guess I just
Bugsy Malone
haven't watched them because they haven't, persevered in the...
When was Some Like It Hot
zeitgeist
released? That seems like a film that you'd like, Sol.
Does Some Like It Hot end in a custard pie?
No, no, sorry. I was just thinking about comedies. Yeah, just funny comedies.
I mean, I like Some Like It Hot, but it's not funny, is it? It's like a drama with a bit of wit behind it.
A drama with a bit of wit.
It's a comedy.
It's
got men dressed up as women.
It's not
How
proper
funny do you want it to be? That's comedy in the 50s.
It's a comedy insofar as it's not taking itself seriously, but it's not got actual jokes in it. It's not actually funny. It's not like...
Of course it has jokes.
Yeah, not by modern standards.
Well, not by modern standards, but if your sort of classification of comedy is based on it's not like comedy that you would have had in 2020, then I mean that's...
Anyone who sits there and sees a guy go, oh, we're not women, we're men, and then a guy goes, oh, well, nobody's perfect, and then bursts out laughing.
It's no Borat subsequent movie film.
Yeah, exactly. Oscar nominated, multiple Oscar nominee of Borat subsequent movie film.
I'm pretty sure Some Like It Hot got Oscar nominations.
I think it did, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Screenplay.
But that works against its favour because the Oscars hate comedy.
Do you know who would be great in Cinema Una Verite films? Orson Welles. Yeah, but then Peter Sellers would try and do it and be shit because he can't do it, and everyone would just go, why are you acting like a crap comedy character? Stop doing that Indian voice. We don't like it.
Oh, God, I forgot about that. You know what? I think Peter Sellers might be the most problematic Bond because, as we know, Apu has now been cancelled. Doing that voice isn't allowed anymore. So that's a definitive, tangible thing we can point to.
That's his go-to thing. That's his bread and butter.
So I think Peter Sellers is probably the most problematic Bond because Woody Allen's still working. When's the last time Peter Sellers made a film?
Yeah, exactly. 1979.
I mean, it was well after his death, wasn't it? His last film. They were knocking out Pink Panther films with him in for about 10 years after he died. Yeah.
Can I ask you a question, Calvin?
Yes.
So David Niven in this is pretty old, But is he as old as Roger Moore was old when he
Oh.
did Bond? Is he the
That is a
oldest
very
Bond?
good question. Let me have a look, because well, he's supposed to be older, isn't he? He's supposed to be a sort of
Well, exactly. If
retired
he's
Bond.
younger than Roger Moore and he's retired.
That's true, right? David Niven will have been 57 when this film came out, so he'll have been as old in this as Roger Moore was in his last Bond film.
Oh, well, there you go.
57.
And
Yeah.
how old will Daniel Craig be by the time No Time to Die comes out?
Oh, who knows? Did you have any more notes on this one, Saul?
I've written down that the Burt Bacharach theme tune at the front's terrible.
Oh, good lord! That's the one thing that people seem to like about this film, the music. I'm not a huge fan, but
I didn't mind the music overall, like the score. It didn't feel like Bond. It felt like Austin Powers. But I'm talking specifically about the opening theme, which we're subjected to in a kind of crappy, prolonged opening title sequence with all the actors' names popping up. I just thought it was a pretty bad theme tune.
I liked the bit over the end where it was like going, how's it go? Casino Royale, James Bond at the Casino Royale.
Casino Royale.
I can't remember how it goes, but I was quite enjoying that when they were doing the
James
custard
Bond at
pie
the casino.
fighting.
Yeah.
7 James Bonds at Casino Royale. They came to save the world and win the gal at Casino Royale. 6 of them went to a heavenly spot. The 7th one is going to a place where it's terribly hot. Formula is C, Wilbur 007. He's got a redhead in his arm.
I made one more note.
Nah.
So that taxi driver, his fare is £482.15 and 9p.
Yeah.
And I looked that up, and that would be about £8,130 and 15p in today's money.
Ooh.
Makes sense.
I mean, I don't know why I felt the need to.
Yeah,
find
that's
it out,
interesting that you felt the need to Google that.
That's how you did that whilst the film was on, though, didn't you?
Of course I did, Alan. Of
Yeah,
course
you're
I
just
did.
looking for something to do. Yeah, I know what you mean.
I was just like, well, I thought that gag worked. That was like a legitimate joke you might see in, an airplane or a naked gun. It felt like it had worked as a joke. And then I thought, like, is the joke that that's not very expensive or that it's like really expensive? And, turns out that it's really expensive.
Yeah, but that's probably how much it would cost to drive across from London to Berlin.
I reckon it costs you more than that. to be
I would have
honest.
thought so, yeah.
Yeah.
I think John Cleese got a taxi across Europe when that Iceland volcano went off. Do you remember, Alan, when you got stuck in Amsterdam?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've been to Amsterdam?
Yeah.
Okay.
He went there for a film thing. It wasn't for recreational purposes.
Yeah, of course
But
not.
we got trapped there, in the volcano.
Mm.
And then John Cleese refused to give us a lift. It's a difficult thing to really make a good comparison on, though, isn't it? Because what is the buying power of that? Like in 1967, you could buy a house for 482, 13 and 6. Whereas like now you couldn't buy a house for $8,000. So it's not necessarily an equivalent sense,
true.
you know.
True. I think a taxi to London is like from Manchester would be about 200, 300 quid, something like that. I think I had to book one once or twice when working at the BBC for.
Does that include congestion charge?
Probably not.
You'd expect a good tip though, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I'm surprised the BBC let you book taxis.
It was. Oh God! Taxis constantly. Yeah.
So that's where our money goes, is it?
It's not. It's normally to take them to the train station. But that was kind of the nuclear option if, a train got delayed and they had to be back somewhere or what have you. It's like, well,
if you want John Prescott or whatever for question time, he insists on having a thing.
A taxi from Hull.
Well, 400 quid on a taxi is pittance in terms of TV budgets, isn't it? And
John Humphreys needs a sandwich in the taxi at the back.
Yeah, exactly.
Crayfish
crayfish and lemon sandwich. And
his Seabrook crisps. I wish I could have some sort of comparison between Seabrook crisps and other types of crisps. I'd like to know what the best crisps are.
Well,
Alan, you'll want to head over to our Patreon patreon.com/Dim Returns, where Calvin and I are going to be launching the Crispcast soon.
I can't
This
wait.
is something we've been joking about for ages, and similar to this film, Casino Royale, we're kind of doing a joke for real to the point that it'll either sap all the life and fun out of the joke, or it'll be even funnier because we're just doing it.
We're going to start with a series on prawn cocktail crisps. Skips, Seabrooks, Walkers. Yeah.
I bought a tube of Pringles as well, just to shake things up.
Prawn cocktail Pringles.
See how they compare, yeah.
Fabulous. Are we doing it all in one, or are we going to do individual installments?
I think we should do prawn cocktail as like a pilot, like episode 1. And then when people demand we do more, we can break out the big
Smoky
books,
bacon.
do salt and vinegar.
Do smoky bacon.
Do they still do smoky bacon?
Yeah, of course they do.
Huh. It's not one that I would go for.
McCoys call it bacon sizzler or something.
Of course. Yeah. God, I don't buy the variety packs as such. I'm mainly a Wotsits and Monster Munch man these days.
Oh, Monster Munch, very good. Yeah, it's a good choice.
Yeah.
Underrated, I'd say.
Very much so, yeah. You just don't get much in the packet.
And Wotsits, you know what? Calvin, how do you feel about the new line of giant Wotsits?
Oh, is that why they've gotten so big now? I've been wondering that, because some of them come out looking like
You've been
my
buying
fingers.
giant Wotsits without realizing.
You thought it was shrinking.
Well, I like them. I think I much prefer a giant Wotsit to a standard size Wotsit. The standard Wotsits, when you go back to standard Wotsits now, Calvin, you'll think, bloody hell, they're like worms. They're tiny. You'll think, how did I ever eat things this small before the giant Wotsits came along?
Guys, you don't give away this kind of gold.
No, I was going to say,
save
it's
for
a
when I'm
preview
not
of what you could
Crispcast.
get over on Patreon. And on that note, actually, you know, if you are a big James Bond fan, head over to our Patreon, because
To hear people talk about films you love in a disparaging way.
I don't think it'll quite be out yet at the time of this episode being released. I think it will probably be the next Diminisode released. But soon there will be a wonderful James Bond quiz game that the three of us played. One of my favourite Diminisodes of all time. We got very giddy and silly and enjoyed chatting about James Bond and its actors and people involved. So, yeah, there are Diminisodes beyond crisp talk. Okay. Casino Royale.
Yes.
What's that name about? Is that the name of the casino? It
Yes.
is, isn't it? Okay. Right, next question. Casino Royale.
Oh, I like this quickfire round.
Why do they call it Casino Royale? Why Royale? Because it's trying to sound French?
It's in France, isn't it?
Yes.
Is it in France? Okay.
Yes.
Well, what's casino in French?
Casino.
Okay, so why isn't it Casino?
It probably is, but, you know, we've anglicised it for the sake of the audience.
Yeah, James Bond's not going to do a French accent, is he? He's just... Croque, monsieur, please. Points at the board loudly.
To the picture.
Un croissant.
Give me un croissant. Escargot now.
Right, I've looked it up. In French, it's... Oh, no, sorry. No, I've looked up... It's actually a region in France called Royal-le-Eu. Royal-le-Eu?
Oh.
That's of water. That's water.
Oh.
That's like the royal waters.
Swan Princess.
It's like bath. That's water, yeah. Well, it's plural of water. It'd be waters.
Oh,
Royal
yes,
waters,
waters. Yeah, royal waters. There we go.
Yeah, where in the UK we call that Thorpe Park, don't we?
Before we round up with Casino Royale, Calvin, what was the fallout from all this? Because you said it made a bit of money, but
Yeah, why is there not Casino Royale 2? How come this didn't launch a whole franchise?
Well, it did make money. Charles K. Feldman died not that long after the film was released, I don't think. And after that, I'm not quite sure what happened to the rights, you know.
went to his son Corey. And that's how he got into the business.
It seemingly went to
There must be some connection between them. Come on.
It seemingly went to. I mean, obviously, also around about that point, you have Kevin McClory and his rights to Thunderball. So you have these different entities, and maybe they just couldn't get it off the ground again. Plus, the spy craze kind of died down after the 60s. The next Bond film, You Only Live Twice. Yeah, the next Bond film, You Only Live Twice, didn't perform as well as Thunderball. And I do wonder...
But that's because Thunderball was so terrible that everyone was like, well, I'm not watching another one of them.
Well, and you do have to wonder how much...
I mean, I know we've not rated this one yet, but when we get to our ratings, you're going to see that I prefer this to Thunderball.
Oh, for God's sake.
Thunderball's so shit.
I know, and I don't even like it, but I would take that over this, maybe. Yes, no, I would. But yeah, so I guess the rights just ended up with people who didn't...
You had to think about it.
Who didn't, exploit it. And then eventually, obviously, the rights ended up with the regular Bond producers, and they could launch the sixth actor in the role with a proper adaptation of that source material.
I mean, it took them 40 years to sort that out.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to rate it then?
It's tough. I mean, I don't like putting numbers on Bond films at the best of times, ratings-wise. And even this is a bit tricky. There are bits that I actually really like. I love that whole segment but okay, love is a bit strong. I quite like that whole segment in Berlin where it's obviously doing Cabinet of Dr. Caligari kind of stuff. And I think there are some jokes in here that kind of work because they are so outrageous and the money is just on the screen, all of these incredibly impressive sets. The thing looks like it cost a fortune and all of these celebrities are just coming in and off for like a day's filming here and there. It is a massive mess though, and it's never something that I come to just sit and watch to relax to. It's impossible. But as a historical artifact, as like a piece of sort of like fascination with production history stories and all that kind of stuff, I get a lot out of it. I like talking about it. But I just don't like watching it. I guess it's going to have to be a 3 out of 10 from me. Just because the stuff that I get out of it is few and far between, and I can't say I ever sit down and watch this for entertainment. So there we go.
Yeah, I thought it was awful. It's sort of a combination of a type of comedy that I don't even like when it's supposedly good and done badly. And the few little glimmers of hope, like some of the nice set design and stuff, just isn't enough to pull me through it all. It was not able to hold my interest. I kind of had a sort of existential crisis after it. It's just like any film that makes me just think, like, what's the point of life if this is what life is giving me? What is the point? I consider that a negative emotion. I'm going to give that a 1 out of 10.
Oof, my goodness.
But you have that emotion from, Lord of the Rings and Star Wars as well, I seem to remember you saying.
Yeah, but at least they're well put together.
Wow, well, I guess I'm overwhelmingly going to be the most positive of the three of us then.
I knew it was going to end up this way. Just knew it.
Well, don't get too ahead of yourself. I've got this ranked on my James Bond list here, my list of James Bond films that I maintain. It's my 18th favourite James Bond film.
Out of how many that we've seen so far?
Of, 20, 21, something
This will be the 21st, yeah.
Yeah, so I've got 22 on here because I think I must have that Never Say Never Again on here somewhere as well, I guess.
Did we do that?
No, but I've seen it.
Oh, right. Oh.
So here we have The Living Daylights at the bottom.
Oof.
Thunderball above that. For Your Eyes Only above that. Die Another Day above that. And then above all of those, Casino Royale. I would take it over those films.
Wow.
But I'm still only giving it a 4 out of 10 because it is terrible. But, I just think James Bond's pretty terrible overall at this point, so that's where we're at.
Well, will that all change with the next film? It's like if it doesn't, then this has been a hopeless venture these last few years, making you watch all these films if you don't at least like Casino Royale, which is
it's his last hope.
I know, but we'll see.
But I might like Casino Royale. I might.
I know. I'm really. Oh God. I'm just hoping.
I mean, I hope I do. I'm not going to go into it with a negative Nancy hat on. I'd like to like James Bond. It'd be
He's
nice.
He's going to be a positive Percy.
Yeah, I think the listeners would appreciate it if It's a good story arc for this podcast, isn't it? That I come round on James Bond and at the end,
and then you'll hate the next one.
So we'll see. We'll see what happens next week with not next week. Wait, is it next week, Alan? When are we going fortnightly? What's happening?
So, as mentioned earlier, when we recorded this, we were planning for Casino Royale 06 to be the following episode. You're now going to have a month's wait, I'm afraid. But if you can't wait for more Bond content from us and Calvin, head to patreon.com/dimreturns and sign up for as little as £1. You can get access to our whole back catalogue of Diminisodes and bonus episodes and other things like that. And to tide you over until our proper Casino Royale episode, one of the Diminisodes we'll be releasing in April is the exciting James Bond quiz that myself, Alan, and Calvin played recently. We were basically playing higher or lower, trying to guess which James Bond-related people have the highest Twitter follower counts. It was really good fun, and in case you don't believe me, here is a clip.
Madonna. Is she hotter shit than Tom Jones or colder shit?
Highest one we're going to see.
Yeah.
At least 3 million. I'm going 8 million.
Oofed.
You both going higher then?
Yes, I'm going higher. Yeah.
All right, that is correct. Madonna has 2.7 million.
Oh, okay.
But does she have more or fewer than Sir Paul McCartney?
Ooh.
Hey, it's me, Paul. Hey, Madonna, I think you're pretty cool, man.
Thank you, Marge, for me lovely picture. I hung it on me wall.
We call them chips. Okay.
This is tough because...
is he on there? Does he do stuff on there? I imagine he has people doing it for him.
I think he's active. I mean, he released an album... I think at the tail end of last year. It might have actually been this year, so he's still very active in terms of making shit, you know?
I'm gonna go higher. I think he might be higher than Madonna.
I think that's very possible. I'm gonna go lower.
Hey, thanks, Calvin, man. That's really nice of you.
It's a solid impression. I can't fault it.
Paul McCartney is he's got almost twice Madonna's following.
Wow.
Actually, maybe not quite. That's an exaggeration, but he has 4.1 million.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, that's an awful lot.
But has he got more or fewer than the Billie Eilish?
Oh. Definitely Billie Eilish will
gotta be higher.
Higher. Yeah.
Oh, look, Billie Eilish is here as well.
Is that Bez?
Just singing in the corner.
I think Billie Eilish
No time to do.
only exists on Twitter, and she isn't it like a fake person.
It's a
like
concept.
in that film with Al Pacino.
like gorillas.
She's just a sort of computer generated thing, isn't she? I think she's gonna have 80 million followers.
Yeah, I think
I have no context for that. What did Justin Timberlake have?
It was Justin Bieber.
Oh god.
Fucking hell. Look, right, so you're both going higher, yeah?
No, I don't think anyone outside of Britain's even heard of her. So I don't be that high. But has she got any presence in America? It doesn't feel like she would have.
Billie Eilish?
Yeah.
Are you joking or
I don't know. Am I joking? Would it be better if I was? I've no idea.
Well, she's American and therefore probably has a bigger presence there than anywhere else.
Hang on, Billie Eilish is American. I genuinely thought she was British.
No, she's American.
Have you ever heard her speak?
No.
Oh, okay.
Have you ever heard the theme "No Time to Die"?
No. No time to die. I genuinely thought she was British. I've only seen her, and she looks like a kind of dirty chav British council estate scum. I think I just assumed
Well, yeah,
she was British.
but they're just replicating the kind of.
They're doing the Bond stuff. I genuinely thought she was British. I didn't. That was not a joke at all.
Well, yeah, it's not funny if it isn't.
I'm going higher. Yeah, definitely.
I will definitely go higher. It just amused me. Alan thought she might be this sort of like, not known out of the UK sort of little artist. And I think she's going to have the highest of them all. I think she's probably going to have 10 million plus, something like that.
I was actually really, really surprised at how low her follower count is to say how much of a huge name she is now. But higher is correct. Paul McCartney has 4.1 million. Billie Eilish has 5.1 million.
Oh, that's
which is really not a lot for someone like Billie Eilish, really. But, I guess it's down to how much she posts on there.
I think the kids have moved on from Twitter.
To
Twitter
TikTok.
is so 2017.
Well, that is true. That is very true.
She's moved on. She's too young for it.
They're all on Parler.
Parlay. It's French.
Billie Eilish or John Cleese. Ooh, tantalising. Okay, so patreon.com/Dim Returns. Head over there for more stuff. And here's the rest of the episode. You idiot. You fell for this April Fool's. You moron. But do come back next week when we'll be doing... and then after that, it's going to be bi-weekly. Ooh, not bi-weekly. Fortnightly. I mean, it is technically bi-weekly, but bi-weekly is one of those annoying words that means two very different things. like how this film annoyed me. I think it was this film. Is it this film where they talk about a one-way mirror?
Yes.
And I was like, hang on, it's a two-way mirror, isn't it? And I looked up and it's like, both are acceptable.
Oh.
Just call it a fucking see-through mirror. Like, why call it a one-way and a two-way mirror if they both mean the same thing? It's obviously a meaningless phrase if both of those things mean the same when they mean, the words themselves have...
Inflammable means flammable?
What a country.
Is that it?
I think so. Thanks, guys, for watching this. I'm actually quite... I never thought we'd do this, I thought we'd maybe look at Never Say Never Again. I thought this one might take some convincing, so I was very pleased that it worked out nicely with this April Fool's Day tie-in.
Yeah, I'm glad to tick it off, finally. And I'm really excited to finally move into the Craig era. For anyone listening who isn't aware, I have never seen a Daniel Craig James Bond film before. I would say at this point, I think Casino Royale is probably the biggest blind spot in my film viewing knowledge and history out of anything. Because
it can't be.
Well, I ticked off all the obvious ones last year during the pandemic. I've seen everything on IMDb's top 250. I've seen name a film. I've probably seen it if it's culturally significant. I think this is the last hurrah. I've seen all the obvious stuff.
Oh, God.
It's either this or the Italian Job, and I think Casino Royale is probably a bigger deal than the Italian Job.
I disagree with that.
Really?
Yeah.
As in the original Italian Job?
Yeah, of course.
No, the Ed Norton one is really culturally significant.
Well, Saul likes him. I don't know.
I mean, I can't think. I mean, Calvin, you'd probably agree Casino Royale's more culturally a big deal than the Italian Job, right?
No, James Bond
I would
is
say
more
so.
culturally significant, but I don't know about Casino Royale.
No, I
think
it
even
is.
if you were
Modern day James Bond, though, isn't it? Like Casino Royale is.
I think if you were to say to people, "Hey, James Bond, name 3 James Bond films," that wouldn't be on most people's list.
Oh no, it 100% would be.
I think it would be.
Yeah.
I think the average person in the street would go straight to the Daniel Craig ones.
No.
When you get that, you're either going to get people who talk about they'll just go, the famous names, Diamonds Are Forever, Goldfinger, yeah, and you're going to get people who actually watch them, and they'll go, oh yeah, Casino Royale, Skyfall.
Nah, Skyfall.
Well, I think I think Casino Royale is the most significant film that I have yet to watch.
That's interesting.
So it's a big moment for me as a film goer, a film fan.
Oh, I'm really looking forward to it now.
Casino Royale.
Yeah, the real one. Not the 1950s Barry Nelson TV anthology film. But maybe we'll get to that one day.
No, we should do another April Fool's and do that.
Then we'll have no listeners.
You idiot. You fell for it. You moron.
That's it.
See you next week.